Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. We are the three Hokagis and this is the Tatakatalk podcast. Today we're going to talk about the latest movie from Studio Ghibli that we've just watched. It's a very hot subject. It's brand new. It's coming up with the Oscars. The Boy and the Heron. But first we're going to introduce ourselves. I am Marvin.
I'm Anna.
I'm Miguel.
And today we're going to talk about our thoughts on The Boy and the Heron. So Anna, what did you think about the movie?
Well, to summarize, it was a confusing movie, to be honest. Like, it's a beautiful movie because it's a Ghibli movie. I cannot say anything about it other than it's beautiful, just like every other Ghibli. But just like every other Ghibli, it was very confusing. I guess that I'm pretty sure that I'm lacking a bunch of like metaphors and the
Japanese
meaning,
lore.
Japanese lore, and I'm missing a bunch of anime arcs here in order to understand, because like the whole meaning behind birds and everything, like. But regardless of that, the idea that it tried to convey across, it was very clear. It was not like it was actually very like they kept like kept like going in the same track of like, is the whole thing about staying in a fantasy world where you're living in a perfect fantasy thing, or are you gonna stay in the real world where reality is harsh, but you choose to deal with it. So ultimately I felt like the whole point came across. Is it my favorite Ghibli movie? Not particularly, but I don't know, it was nice. It was not my favorite, but I did like the message that it conveyed. Like, what about you?
Sure. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I think I enjoyed the movie. I'm very confused by this film. I don't know what it was trying to convey. I don't exactly know. I know the message that you just said, and I understand the meaning, and I understand what it was getting across and where it was getting at. However, the way it was giving that message across was very convoluted. I feel like more than other Ghibli movies, this one maybe went too much towards the route of imagination.
Of the absurd,
It,
I
it
guess.
was it was abstract. That's the word that I'm trying to use. It used, I feel like, too many metaphors and trying to wrap up this tale around something that was maybe a little bit too poetic, and I feel like he could have made the point across much quicker, much more efficiently. So I was a little disappointed by that because I went in blindly, not knowing what to expect. And not to say that I was disappointed, but I've been used to better quality, or at least something that I enjoy more with Ghibli. I'm thinking about Spirited Away, I'm thinking about Mononoke, and I'm thinking about my personal favorite, Howl's Moving Castle. Cannot really talk much about the other ones. Maybe The Grave of the Fireflies, which was the trauma of the century.
Oh my god.
But this one felt like on the bottom tier list, and I wish it would have been a little higher, especially because I was extremely hyped up about Robert Pattinson being the Heron. We watched it in Japanese, just like to put it out there, so we didn't have that voice acting. However, Christian Bale, Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson, pretty much enough to sell me out. But overall, I would say very hyped up, but at the end of the day, quite disappointing. How about you, Miguel? What do you think?
I would agree with that point. I think the, expectation going in before watching the movie was very high. There was a lot of hype. I didn't know there was as much hype as you guys let me know afterwards, which I find hilarious. All the things with the Colombian girl that you can bring up later.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, but I think I have learned that with Studio Ghibli, although they can be very hyped up, I have to keep my keep calm and really try to see what it's about, because the messages they portray, I find many times, are very complicated, and there are movies that I maybe even watched as an adult, but that I haven't fully figured out, um, you know, after watching them. So maybe we could at some point talk about some other of their movies. But yeah, in general, specific with this one, I think the pacing for me when I watch an anime movie is a constant issue, because I feel that at the beginning, okay, you are like introduced to this new world, right? And you get to see all the beautiful scenery, but not a lot of the plot of the actual story. And then in this movie in particular, I feel that the last, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and especially the ending, like, are so intense story wise. So I was literally about to have like a heart attack or question who I was towards the end. And I'm like, this is not what was happening the last hour and a half. So yeah, I think the pacing for me was a big point that wasn't my preference, honestly. And one point though that I did notice watching the movie, that I thought maybe there is something behind this, and Anna just casually touched on it, and I think that's great, because it just reminded me that that's a point that we can discuss. Is the one about making the choice between an alternative universe where I think it's called the name of the character was the Great Uncle. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was the Great Uncle.
Yeah, the Great Uncle asks Mahito, like, are you sure you want to go back to that world where people kill themselves, where they rob each other?
Exactly.
Wouldn't you want to create Wouldn't you want to create this alternate world where you can live by these strong values and don't have to deal with as much suffering? And I think that was a point put forward towards the end of the movie, but I think it's a key point. What choice are you going to make? And I think that is actually related to the phrase that Himi, Mahito's mom, tells him when he asks, wait, where will you go if I go back to my reality? And she says, I'll just go back to mine. And he's like, wait, but you're going to die in a fire. And she's like, I'm not afraid of the fire, and I wouldn't mind dying and living that life if it meant, having you as my son. And, I consider myself lucky to get to call you my son. So I think that's something that maybe I didn't completely think through while watching the movie, but right now that Anna mentioned it, I think that might be something very important, right? And maybe that is actually linked to why the movie ends so quickly, because it's not about what will happen after that, it's about the choice that you make. So those are my general first thoughts.
I agree with you. I feel like it's more about the journey than about the result. And full disclosure, I was so confused by the movie that I had to Google a little bit of stuff afterwards to kind of gather my thoughts and being like, okay, is this how it really ended? Because I was very confused by the last frame being like a still shot and nothing. And it was, is the movie over? Like, is something happening? But in this specific case, from what the article was saying, and then we could link it in the description if you guys are interested, but they were mentioning that just like every other Miyazaki movie, it always has to do with his own struggle with accepting the world that he's in, and delving deep down in the worlds that he creates. Because first of all, the main character Mahito is also a self-insert for Miyazaki to some degree, because apparently his dad had an involvement in World War II with a factory selling weapons. So already you can kind of tell the link. Then there was his mom who died in an accident at a young age, like not an accident, a disease, I think. It's all those elements that he included in the movie, in the scenario, which I feel like it really relates to his struggle to accept his world. That Miyazaki's always known to have comments about the world that are very pessimistic. He's always saying that the world is disgusting, that why would you like make art, whatever. And then he comes up with those beautiful movies, but he himself is a very pessimistic person. And I feel like the choice of Mahito at the end, which was to come back home, which was a constant throughout the movie, that he wanted to come back to his dad, he wanted to come back to his old life, and everything that happened in the middle, as convoluted and confusing as it was, led him to accept his condition and genuinely make the choice for himself that he wants this. I actually want to relate it real quick to, because we saw Beetlejuice, the play, recently, and there is this play on the girl who's called Lydia, who's played by Winona Ryder in the movie. It's much less explained in the movie than it is in the play, but there's this whole thing about her dad remarrying and bring this new woman to the house, and it's very similar to Mahito and his aunt becoming his new mom, which is also awful because he meets this woman and she's like, "Hey, I'm your new mom," and I'm like, "Are you okay? You're my aunt, now you're my mom. Okay, who are you?" And at the end, she even in the other world says, "I'm gonna accept her as my new mom. She's gonna be my new mom because it's better than nothing." And in Beetlejuice, there is this phrase in the song which it reminds me of. She says, "I'm gonna come back to Delia, which is her stepmom, and dad. They're messy, but they're all that I have." And it's a song that really like strikes me, because I'm like, yeah, your situation might not be ideal, but if you choose that situation for yourself, whether it's settling at the end or just actively choosing to make the best of your situation, I feel like that's what Mahito decided. He was like, "This is my life. I cannot change the past, and I have to move on with what I have, and I have to move on with the fact that I have a dad that does love me, that I have a family, and that I still have stuff that I can hang on to." So I feel like the point A and the point Z of the movie made sense. It's just that everything in the middle had so much going on, with the heron that is still a very mysterious character, with the dolls, with the implications of the old woman, the other world. I feel like it was maybe too many elements for its own good. I feel like it lost itself along the way.
Well, what I would like to say, thinking about what both you and Miguel said, that just came really quickly to my head. It's like, literally the part where the great uncle tells him like, "Why would you want to go back to this horrendous world when here I'm giving you these pieces for you to create the most perfectly balanced and beautiful world where everything is perfect?" And literally the parakeet king comes and he destroys this. The parakeet king who is in the perfect world of the great uncle. And that only goes to show that his world was not perfect. And he even said it himself, he could only hold it for so long. And that's like, well, it is true that Mahito had to make a decision of, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? Am I going to go back? The truth is that the perfect world does not exist. No matter where you see it, it's always going to collapse. And it depends on you if you want to like stay and collapse with it, or if you want to go back to this other world where things are not working, but it's reality that you're grasping onto, instead of this world of fantasy that is never gonna hold, you know? And I would like to draw a three-way parallel, if that's something. It's okay when it's in a three-way. It's not gay when it's in a three-way. Because I was thinking this whole time, it's an obvious like a parallel to make with Alice in Wonderland, because Alice, same thing. She's a child who's interested in this like fantasy thing. She falls in a rabbit hole and she goes into this entire world full of marvels and everything is amazing. And at the end, everything collapses. The world was never perfect to begin with, but she was enamored with the world. She was like exploring and everything. And eventually she got to the dark part. Just like Mahito, he got to the dark part, which were the parakeets, who were borderline like parasites in that world. Like they were inhabiting like the meteor or whatever it was, the rock. Then they wanted to control the whole world. They wanted like... And in Alice in Wonderland, eventually she encounters the Red Queen, and it becomes like a whole thing, and then the whole world falls apart, and she has to come back. It's similar to Mahito. He has to come back to his reality. It's not even a choice. When it is the whole time, we are meant to believe that it is a choice, because he chooses to not go to school. He chooses to not fake an injury, but like cause an injury to himself. He chooses to be a part of it, but in the end he has to come back. But the thing is that he, just like Alice, he made the right decision of putting himself out of it and not get consumed by it like the great uncle did. And this brings me to my third parallel, which is the Pan's Labyrinth, the movie by Guillermo del Toro, where Ophelia, I think is the name of the girl,
I think
she lives in a situation where her mom remarries this very I'm gonna say like very violent man, completely abusive man.
And it's also a war context.
It's context, extremely similar. And in this situation, Ophelia gets completely consumed by this fantasy world where she goes like into adventures, and she does many things trying to save her brother, because she's convinced that something is going badly with her mother's like pregnancy, but trying to save her mom. Escapism. But the difference is that Ophelia never wanted to leave, and at the end she dies.
Yeah.
So she gets consumed by this fantasy. And in the end, we see her that she is like reborn, quote unquote, as like the queen of the world that the Pun told her. And it's these three little kids who want to escape their own world. And Ophelia chose not to, she got consumed. And then Alice and Mahito, they did choose to leave, and they came out to what they knew reality. And they took like a hold on to it, right? Mm-hmm. And Mahito, he chose the whole time. He was like, because at first he came with the fantasy of his mom being alive. That's how he got hooked in. And then his reality now was his aunt, who was his new mom, if you wanna... That's weird, but anyway. So he grasped onto the reality, and he was, I need to get her back. I need to get her back. I need to get her back. And even when she tried to push him away, and he had also the opportunity of being the new person who controlled the world, even if there were this like reasons for him to stay, he still chose to stay onto reality, even with his mom there. Granted, his mom was a child, but it was his mom that was there. He still came back, and his mom also came back. And well, it is presented as a choice, and I do feel like the whole message is like, don't get consumed by your own fantasy, like the escapism. I do feel like there is also the second message of these things never last. They never hold. And if you try to stay in that thing, you're going to destroy yourself. Yeah. And I don't know, it was like those double message that was intertwined, if you want to call it that I just realized right now, like, and I found very, very interesting.
I feel like there's even a third message, because you mentioned the Parakeet King, like, causing the collapse of the world, or at least accelerating it, because the great uncle said that it was unstable and that he needed Mahito to take over because he would find a successor, and the only way to find a successor would be to find his bloodline. Right. However, Mahito says something very mysterious that I still cannot explain, and he says that there was something evil about the pieces of the tower.
Right. Yes.
And he mentions that there's an energy from those pieces that he doesn't feel is correct. And I feel like it brings back to your point that is like, this world is also led by a higher form of power that is very unknown and very unstable, the rock that he shows. And it's being controlled by this entity, really, that still doesn't quite make sense to people. And it's like this whole new thing, and it's hard to navigate through something that you don't understand, because even the uncle got consumed trying to understand what it was. However, I would just want to add this little bit of a counterpoint from what you were saying, because first, the evil coming out of the pieces, I feel like was Mahito feeling something was wrong with this whole world.
Most likely.
But something that I found genuinely tragic, and I don't know if you guys picked that up, most likely, is they show us the Parakeet King as someone that is, you're introduced to him and you're immediately feeling that person is not a good person, because he cuts the bridge, he tries to get Mahito away, then he follows them in this really weird sequence where he hides behind stuff that is like half as big as him, and it's like he follows. Like literally, there's this big dude that has like, that does 3 times the size of a tree, and he's like hiding.
It looked like what's the story about this girl with the red
The Red Riding Hood?
Red Riding Hood?
that goes into the forest and there's the wolf.
Yeah, Red Riding Hood.
Hood.
Yeah, exactly. I literally thought
Like the
about
wolf,
that
yeah.
during those scenes. It didn't make sense for him to hide.
No, exactly. But the thing that I found particularly tragic in that moment is that when the Parakeet King decides to build the tower for himself, he does it in a rush and he does it really badly, and then the thing collapses and it brings the whole thing to extinction. But all that the Parakeet King wanted was to save his world. Because if the movie was from his perspective, we would find his reasons very reasonable, because he tried to take over and make sure that his people and himself would still continue to exist, because he was about to get extinct. So he thought, because then when he passed on the other side, he just became a regular parakeet. But
his world did change.
But his world did change, and his world did come to an end. And that's the thing, when I saw him desperately trying to build this thing, trying to save himself and his people, I actually felt a little bit sad, because I realized that this man just wanted to keep his world going, and that Mahito, given the chance, would have done the same thing if the roles were reversed. But he was a collateral damage. At the end of the day, he was a collateral damage, because that world was, I guess, not natural in the first place. It was not supposed to exist, and then it did, which I still don't fully quite grasp what it is.
But that also has to do with, like, borderline my point is that the great uncle got himself into this thing. He created this world from what I understood, and it was so unstable and so unbalanced that there were the pelicans who could not eat, could not fly, and they were eating whatever they could, but they were being chased away, and they were getting like burnt, and they would rather die. And then the parakeets evolved into this huge
there was conflict.
It was not balanced.
Yeah.
So I think that's also like the whole thing is like, even from a beginning,
that nothing is perfect.
It was never perfect
in either side. Yeah, I see it.
And I think even there's another character, the one that was in the boat. The first one that Mahito encounters.
Kiriko.
Kiriko, the old woman.
Yeah, Kiriko, but the young version.
The young version,
right? The young version. So I think she points out that there are these like fishermen, I believe, but they couldn't fish. They couldn't kill.
Yeah.
So they were like these empty entities, basically, just going around, and they were dependent on her to be like to cut the fish and feed the waka waka. If
the wara wara.
Not miss waka waka, like Shakira's song. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
We're gonna do the choreography.
Waka waka No, okay, just kidding. So the wada wada. So basically, you see these dysfunction to a certain extent, as you were pointing out, Anna. But also, I wanted to mention a couple of things that you touched on, Marvin. The first one is the great uncle. Sorry, Mahito noticing that there is this negative energy coming out of the rocks, right? So I believe it's precisely after he notices that the great uncle mentions, that's why I chose you as my successor. I think it was because Mahito was able to perceive, the evil in those rocks. And in a way, I think it was because the great uncle saw in Mahito that he wasn't easily fooled. And if I recall correctly, Mahito, when he tells why he cannot be the successor, he points out to the fact that he had hurt himself, and he had injured himself. He had this scar, and he said,
he's not pure.
Exactly, I'm not pure. I cannot be your successor because there's evil in me. And I think there is something to be explored there about, recognizing evil and not trying to escape from evil. I don't know exactly what the role of that is, why the successor in that universe had to be someone that could identify evil. I don't know. You guys could let me know if you know.
But I felt like the world was pushing away Mahito, even him. Because you remember when he went with the mom to the chamber to see his aunt, and then the electricity started following them, and Himi, his mom, is telling him, I cannot go in with you, the walls are angry.
Exactly.
So something is pushing them back, but I don't know why.
And now that you bring it up, that scene was very complicated. I was so confused when he goes into the delivery room, and then his aunt is telling him, I hate you with all my heart. Do you remember that? I was like, what's going on? Was that really the way she felt towards Mahito? Was that a reaction of being in that world, and maybe some evil in her showing up that wouldn't otherwise show up, that was repressed? I don't really know. But what did you guys think about that scene?
I didn't even know why the aunt ended up in that world in the first place. To me, it doesn't make sense, because we know the story about the mom that disappeared with her sister and the old woman, I think, right?
No, she just disappeared, herself and the old woman.
That they disappeared, but why was the aunt there? What was the... Because I was starting theorizing. I was like, okay, then maybe she's gonna give birth to the baby, and the baby's gonna be the successor, and it's like a sacrifice kind of thing to protect Mahito. But turns out, no, it's not at all. So why was she there? The second theory is that she insulted him to protect him, because if he's mad, he's not gonna stay and he's gonna leave, so then he's gonna be safe. And she kind of took his place. But it doesn't seem like it, except that when she insulted him, she cried afterwards. So my only guess is she didn't mean what she said, and she probably tried to push him away. Or... No, she can't even blame him for her sister's death.
The only thing that is coming up to mind right now is that you remember when she is in bed in the real world, and they keep telling Mahito, you have to go see her, she wants to see you, you have to go see her, she wants to see you, and eventually he does, and she touches him where the scar is, and then afterwards she goes missing. I think because, I don't know, I feel like there's a connection with people who have the bloodline, just like Kiriko said at some point, only the descendants of this or the people with the blood can hear him. I feel like she knew what was happening. She could hear the great uncle, and I feel like she knew that there had to be a successor, and she somehow realized that Mahito either should not be the one to protect him, or could not be the one because there was a little evil in him.
Could be.
And maybe she was willing to sacrifice herself. And I feel like when she said, I hate you with all my life and stuff, she was trying to push him away. And he was like, no, you're my mom. And he kept like saying mom and her name.
But
and then she realized.
According to you, in what way would she, like, what reason would she have to push him away? Did she...
So that he would not become the successor.
But why wouldn't she want him to be the successor?
Because I feel like she realized that he is not...
suited for the role?
Exactly,
So she would work.
but not in a bad way. Like, he is someone who... Like Majito said, I have an evil in me because of what he caused to himself.
Mm-hmm.
So she probably thinks like, no, he should not get lost in this fantasy because he's beyond this, you know, like she wants to protect him basically.
That's interesting because I also saw it from hearing you. I saw it in a different way, which was maybe she said she hated him because she had to take the sacrifice.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
That she's sacrificing either herself or her son to be the next successor.
Basically, like, why couldn't it be you? I hate you. Why do I have to do this, right? Like, not blaming him directly, but being like blaming the situation and be like, why does it have to be like this?
It could be either this.
Because I don't think it was personal. I don't think it was personal towards the kid.
I think it was either what you're saying right now, that she feels a little resentment towards the situation, or to me, my interpretation is that she's trying to push him away. How do you push away a child? You tell him that you hate him, get away from me. And then when he did not get away, because I think that deep inside he knew that she was acting in a desperate manner because they were getting attacked by those paper things.
Yeah.
He was like, no, and he kept trying to reach, and then she gave in. She did not keep trying to push him away.
Maybe also because he's the only remnant of her sister. Like, it's also like a bad situation for her. It's not like she married the dad, right? But
I think that she wants to protect him. Like, even since the beginning, it was a little ominous when we started watching the movie. We with
thought she was
Marvin,
gonna poison him.
we saw her a little ominous.
Yeah.
But I feel like the whole time she was in fact trying to...
I think she was looking out
to
for
protect him.
Because she even chased the heron multiple times. The old woman included. They all knew he was bad news. So they had his best interest in mind. Down to the point where when Majito was making his little school shooter weapons, then they helped him. So I think they had his best interest in mind. But why did the aunt come in? What is her role in the story? Why was this whole thing even there in the first place? What link does it have to the mom and the old woman disappearing back in the day? There's so many things that don't really add up.
To me, the only thing that makes sense is the fact that they could hear. Just like to me, it makes sense that Majito and his mom got lost at a young age.
Yeah. Because
as a child, you're curious. And the old woman said that those with the bloodline can hear the great uncle.
It makes sense.
And it would make sense if the heron had also talked to the mom and whatnot.
That much makes sense because even at the beginning of the movie, Majito adventures himself in the old well and he finds like the door and immediately he goes and he's like curious because he sees the heron. So it is a kid behavior, 100%.
And I think that the aunt, pregnant and everything, she knew that there was an evil to this, and I think that she wanted to protect him, so she realized that he was very much following this thing. Multiple times they had to look for him and be like, come back, you're not supposed to do that.
You think she knew what was going on?
I think that she realized, I don't think she knew 100% because she never got lost in there, only her sister did. But I think that she knew that something was happening with that, and she was like, you know what, I'm gonna... Maybe she even thought about her own sister, and she even remembered her own sister getting lost for a year.
True.
And she was like, I'm not gonna lose him. Might as well give myself.
But again, they didn't seem that shocked when he was covered in frogs and the bird attacking him.
The old women, they kept saying multiple times, weird stuff happened here all the time. I don't think that they were impressed because they've seen weird stuff happening because this building is like a connection. Like the mom said at some point when they were inside this dimension. She said this building is connected to multiple worlds, and it's the connection. So this thing is a connection to this. It's like an anomaly.
Right. Yeah, it is an anomaly, and it's almost like alien-like, really, because it came from the stars. But what is your take on that, Miguel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a portal. They kind of. I'm thinking that, to answer the question of why might the aunt, you know, look to go to this other dimension voluntarily. I think the scene that you mentioned, Anna, was important right before she left, when she like touched Mahito's scar. He actually says something that caught my attention, and that was, "I hope my sister can forgive me because I let you hurt yourself." Right?
Right.
So I just thought about that. Right after she said that, Mahito sees through the window and notices that she is going into the forest. So I think there might be also a factor of, I don't know if it's guilt or, looking, searching, going to search for her sister in this other dimension. I think it's also relevant what you said, Marvin, that maybe because of the lineage, right? Maybe she wanted her son to be the new successor to save Mahito. I think that could be the case, but that could also be related to why she went after she started feeling sick, like morning sickness from the pregnancy. But yeah, I don't know if she went there intentionally to, ask her sister for forgiveness, or to just, to like see her again. I don't know exactly why she did that, but yeah, the scene in the delivery room was confusing. One other point that I would, that was very confusing for me was why the parakeets, is that how you say it?
Yeah, parakeets.
Yeah.
The parakeets take, Mahito entering the delivery room as such a great offense. That was something that was also very intriguing to me, because that was the thing that altered the balance of their world, kind of. So was the kid, like the baby that was going to be born, a crucial part in maintaining the balance? That was like a loose end for me, but I'll let you share your thoughts on that. I just want to mention one thing before I forget, and that's the uncle, the great uncle, being, if I'm not mistaken, he was the same character that was at the beginning of the movie, described as this very intelligent man that at one point, from reading so many books, ended up losing his mind. Is that the same guy?
Yeah. That's the same guy.
Right. Okay. So in that sense, what I was thinking is that he became obsessed with control, I feel, in one way. He is like, he became, so obsessed with knowledge and control that that's what motivates him to ask Mahito the question, "Are you sure you want to quit this perfect, quote unquote perfect, because we know it was not perfect, world, to go back to a hellish world where suffering exists?" And I think that is a very, good point or message that is conveyed in the story, because if you really focus so much in trying to be perfect, to control everything, you are going to forego of the joy of being grateful that you're even alive. That on itself, it's kind of a miracle. None of us chose that, so it's imposed, but at the same time it's an opportunity. So in controlling everything, I feel that he forgo that part, the joy of living, and also that world collapsed on itself. So I think that it's not sustainable. Even if you try, it's not sustainable. And the other point that I wanted to mention is that you said, Marvin, how, well, both of you mentioned how it's a bit weird that Mahito, had as his new mom his aunt, right? And I think that was done intentionally, and I think it's connected to what you were saying previously, Marvin, about choosing this world, although it might have shortcomings and imperfections. It's real, right? It's what we have. And I think Mahito gave that example when he was in this alternate dimension, saying, it's better than nothing, right? At least it's something. At least, my family might not be perfect, but it's something. It's what I have. It's what I can rely on. So I think that's a very good message, because sometimes, again, I think this is connected with the great uncle's mindset. We think of life as, a place where we can reach this state of complete bliss, kind of, or this, peace. We think that we can strive for these ideals and that these ideals will come true at one point. And sometimes we wait for so long for these ideals to come true. And many times we actually stop acting because we wait for the right conditions, the perfect conditions, and those conditions might never happen. They are just an ideal. They're just in your mind, the same way those ideals were in the great uncle's mind, but in reality they were not sustainable. They crumbled. So I think that's a very powerful message and a moral of the story. Choose this world and don't wait for that perfect condition, because that perfect condition might never happen, might never come true. So yeah, those were my 2 points that I wanted to tell you. And my other question was the one about why it was so crucial for the parakeets.
I think, I agree with what you said. I think it's about not taking what you have for granted and actually appreciate the things that you do have, rather than lingering on the things that you don't. This is a very good message of the movie. It's like, the real world might be bleak and it might be sad and some tragedies might happen, but you still have some things to hang on to. But as far as the parakeet, if I remember correctly, and tell me guys if I'm wrong, but I do think that the parakeet king, no, he refused because he cut the ways to Mahito, but at the end Mahito did end up meeting the great uncle. So the parakeet king didn't want Mahito to meet the uncle. But there's also this sense that Anna pointed out while we were watching the movie. They said that the aunt was lucky she was pregnant, and they did not eat her because of that, right?
Yeah, they said that they don't eat babies.
But that Mahito's not pregnant, so he's not safe from that. They did want to eat him, like before the heron went to save him. They actually did want to eat him. So he was an intruder. He was the disturbing element in this seemingly perfect world that was like the invader, right? So they were trying to get rid of him. And I feel like what's very confusing to me is that it felt almost like they were waiting for the aunt because they had the delivery room and they brought her there to give birth. And I doubt that a world populated with parakeet would have a hospital. Like,
no, but just like you said about this world not being linear,
yeah,
I feel like the great uncle knew all of this happening, and he probably, because you remember that the parakeet king came to strike a deal.
Yep.
That was we're gonna like give you the aunt, but you're gonna give me the leadership and whatever whatnot.
Right.
Because he knew that the great uncle wanted a successor, so the baby was gonna be a successor, and they probably promised not to hurt the aunt, so they were like,
Makes
okay,
sense.
so the delivery room, whatever. But I'm pretty sure the great uncle had all of this planned because he wanted Mahito, and I'm pretty sure that he knew all along that Mahito was gonna come because the aunt was here.
And also because the heron made sure, because the heron works for the great uncle from what I'm understanding,
Yeah.
because
I think so.
he might have his little temper and he might be like a little weird, but he made sure that Mahito ended up in that world. He was the tempter.
Yeah.
He was the one that made sure that Mahito would come under the pretense that his mom is alive. And then he did the thing with the water and everything, which again, when Mahito's in the tower in the first place and he looks up and he sees someone in a cloak, that's the great uncle.
Yeah.
But is he already in the second world?
Yeah, I think that because this whole tower is a portal.
Yeah. So he sees the
I
great
think-
uncle. Yeah.
But I think they go right after that. They go into the other world because at that point they're in the portal,
Yeah,
but
so
the
he's
portal
not
being
in the other
real
world.
and then they go down.
They get sucked by the floor. Because
Exactly,
the great
yeah.
uncle does not look the same the first time you meet him.
He doesn't?
No. I feel like maybe the only difference is that he has a cloak over his face. You don't see him properly.
Yeah, you don't fully see him. Yeah.
But he looks a little bit different. Then they get sucked into the ground, and which brings the question of what was the heron's role aside from bringing Mahito into this world? Because
I think that was his role, period.
just his role.
Because
then-
he was a companion. He accompanied him the whole time.
And then at the end, yeah, but he was forced to because he had the hole in his thing. And then he
No,
ended up
but-
being linked to Mahito because he ended up caring for him.
Yes.
Which he's a weird little dude. Who is that like heron? Like he's super strange. He's a little man
Who
dressed
is
like a
th-
bird.
Who's this dude? We don't know. I think that he's actually a heron, but in this strange world,
I
he's
think
like
he's
this.
I think he's a man.
Because in the real world, he's still weird.
Yeah.
He's a magic
I
creature.
feel like he's a magic creature, yeah.
Because in the real world, he's still weird.
Maybe
I
he
forgot
was
about
brought down with the meteor.
that. Yeah, maybe. Because even after the
He's
world got
weird.
destroyed, he was still.
He's really
Weird.
strange. Also, he did save Mahito, so either he had an agenda with the great uncle and he was working for him since the beginning, or he did actually end up caring for Mahito, or both. Because at the end, you told me
Right.
that he tells Mahito, "See you soon."
In the Spanish, because in the Japanese one that we watched with the subtitles were kind of strange. It said, "We're never gonna see each other" or something like that. And then I heard the Spanish dub, and it says, "See you later, friend." So in my mind, it's "See you later, friend." He does say "tomodachi," which means friend, but I'm not sure if he means like we're gonna see each other again.
There's one thing that I remember from when they are in the tower right before they get sucked into like the floor. The great uncle, we see him, like we don't fully see him. There's like a big shadow cast onto him, so he's not. We don't see his face, but regardless, he reprimands the bird. What's the
heron?
The heron.
The heron, sorry. The heron, and he says, "You were meant to be a guide to Mahito." Because the heron was constantly trying to,
Kill him.
lie to him. Yeah, to kill him, to cause trouble, and then the great uncle reprimands him. So I do think I agree that it was the great uncle's plan all along. The other point that I think it's important to answer your question, Marvin, is that what was the role of this heron, right? Like, who was he? What was the role overall? And I think there's an important parallelism that I just thought about. We see this scene when Mahito is, creating, like peeling the wood, yeah, like creating this device to fill the hole on his beak, right? So that he can fly again, the heron. And before that, I think when they are with Kiriko, they are having Kiriko like also reprimands both of them, and she's like, stop it already. Like, you are fighting a lot. Maybe you can work together to find Imi. And what Mahito says is that, the I keep forgetting, that's a weird name for me. Heron?
heron?
What was it?
The
Heron. Yeah, heron. I don't know
Heron
what's up
Jaeger.
with my brain. Thank you. I will never forget now. The heron. So, Mahito points out that the heron constantly lies, and he says all herons lie. And then Kiriko asks the heron, "Is that true? Do all herons lie?" And he's like, "Yes, that's true." And Mahito says, "Wait, that's also a lie." And then the heron says, "But wait, that's a lie that is also true." So I think that back and forth that they have together speaks to a deeper message that maybe is hidden in this very convoluted storyline. And that message might be that, he definitely, avoided the truth or lied or whatever, but could still use that to his advantage, in that he could still bring Mahito to that world, and he could still reach that goal of fulfilling the great uncle's order, right? Regardless of what his methods were. But then I also think that is related to a contradiction that we have in this world, right? And that contradiction being, we strive for these ideals, the same ideals that the great uncle wanted to make reality of, peace, truth, loyalty, whatever, a perfect world.
Truth,
but at the
justice,
same
and
time,
the American way.
Exactly. But at the same time, we live in a world that doesn't have that. So that's a duality that it's very well portrayed, in my opinion, in the movie. And I think that duality is part of a contradiction that we cannot eradicate from this world. But that doesn't mean that there's not a way. Because at the end of the day, the heron found a way in his own contradiction, his own weirdness. He got to a goal, right? And I think that's a good message. Maybe he had a point. Maybe he had a point all along.
Maybe the rumbling was justified. We don't know. No, I agree.
Know, yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I feel like contradiction and ambiguity were like the two big notions of this movie. It's everyone is contradictory. Mahito wants to escape his world, but at the same time he sees the beauty in it. The heron has a mission, but at the same time wants to eat and kill his child. The pelicans, they want to live in peace. They're saying that they want to fly as high as their wings can take them, but yet they still have to feed, and they're being locked on this island, and they have to eat the wara wara, right?
Yeah, because they
And
cannot catch the fish because there's no
there's no more fish
fish.
anymore, I think.
Say, I got that fish.
I got that motherfucking fish!
Yeah, something like that.
So they're all having their own contradiction, their whole dilemmas, and they each have to make a choice, and sometimes that choice is not the good one. Like the Parakeet King, he had to make a choice: save his own people or not do anything. He tried to save them, but in turns caused the collapse. Mahito had a choice of becoming the successor, but he felt like something was wrong. And also, you guys kept mentioning that this world was not sustainable. Literally, you have to reorganize that tower every 3 days to make it work. The one other thing that asked you to do that? The Shining. Was The Shining sustainable? No, because he had to rewind the stove in the basement of the hotel, because it's a ticking time bomb. one day it's not gonna work and it's gonna collapse. So it's definitely not sustainable. And I feel like the image of, I'm gonna call it Jenga because it's very similar to Jenga. It's like creating a tower.
Yeah.
It's literally made to be unstable. So yeah,
I mean, the pieces did not even match. There was like a sphere.
there was a cylinder. Yeah, it
like-
was weird.
Yeah.
They didn't really make sense, and I don't think this world was supposed to make sense. I think it was just an anomaly. You mentioned anomaly earlier, and I feel like it's the word. It's an anomaly, and I guess each thing ended up going back to the state where it was supposed to be.
I think this world. Maybe it's gonna be a little bit of a hot take, but
Go ahead, give us your hot take.
just like they kept saying that their great uncle was a very knowledgeable man who lost himself to books. They do say that there's a curse to knowledge, and it's like the more knowledgeable you are, most likely you're gonna end up being like depressed
Mhm.
because you're gonna know more about
Very true.
things. So like just like the ignorance is bliss, the contrary is also true. And I feel like that's why the uncle chose to basically he was like the real world sucks. Truth is while we're in the movie World War II is happening. So it is a reality.
Literally.
And he was like I'm gonna throw myself into this fantasy world and I'm just gonna like this is gonna be my new reality. I'm not putting myself back in that thing. And I feel that the reason why he wanted Mahito specifically to come and either end this cycle or continue it is because Mahito has, in a way, also experienced some sort of, while not fully depression, has experienced
Trauma.
some sort of reality, some sort of trauma. Because the mom at that age, she hadn't because she was very young when she
True.
came in. And the aunt, I don't think she had... Maybe she had hardships in her life, but Mahito, he, at the very beginning of the movie, there's a big fire. He runs after his mom. He keeps having dreams of his mom burning and him getting like sucked into this.
And the fire is a very
has-
traumatic image in the first place.
Yes, he's like you said, he's completely traumatized by this. It's something that haunts him, and I feel like the uncle connected to this, and he was like, he is the one that has to be the next one because he's the one that gets it.
Yeah.
But then Mahito, unlike the uncle who wanted to pretend that this could be a utopia, Mahito was like, no, there is evil in me, which I translate to, I am a person from this reality.
Hmm.
I am not pretending that things can be perfect. I am not perfect. I made this thing to myself. I am not one to create perfection. What I want is my reality, because throughout his journey in this world, he realized that people care about him. Like the little figures of the little grandmas, he realized that they actually care about him. He realized that he cares about his aunt. He cares about his mom, obviously. He cares about the heron. The heron cares about him. I think that he even like connected a little bit with the great uncle. There was like connections of love all over the dad and everything, and like I just feel like there is this whole notion of losing yourself, but I feel like it is connected in a way, and that reminded me of The Shining as well, because of the whole people who are traumatized
Yeah.
are the ones who shine. It is related, I feel, to trauma. Like this whole thing is a
Yeah.
metaphor to being traumatized in one way or another, or suffering from some sort of ailment, like call it depression, call it whatever.
But the fact that this world is also non-linear, because we mentioned that both the mom and Mahito come from different time periods, it also feeds to the fact that it's like an imaginary dream. It's like dreams are non-linear. So the fact that the great uncle went to this place basically forever, which is a place out of time, it's like it's your little piece of heaven, which turned out to not be heavenly at all, but he escaped reality literally and ended up in this sort of imaginary bubble, and this bubble was about to burst one day or another, and that's what happened.
I think he knew, and I think
He
that
probably did.
the only person who was gonna be able to get a grasp onto the reality of this. Just like I feel like that's why Mahito sensed an evil on the rocks. He sensed this is not what it pretends to be.
Mhm.
And the uncle told him it's not evil, and I don't think it's evil. I just think that he sensed that this is not what it pretends to be.
True.
And he knew that he was the only other member of the family who could have done it. And I think that the great uncle, deep inside, maybe he knew that this world was meant to collapse, and he knew that the one that had to do it was Mahito the whole time. That's how I make the connection between the two of them. Like, that's the only explanation that I have. Also, why he could sense evil and why he
Fair enough.
You know, the whole thing happened.
So are you saying that the uncle wanted Mahito to end everything, that he knew he was the only one that was going to be able to end
To make a decision.
Exact, to make. I feel
fake
like
world?
the uncle knew that Mahito was the only one who could have the only person who could possibly make a logical choice or a rational choice in this situation, because he has experienced something similar to what the uncle experiences, I think. And I think that I don't know if the uncle necessarily knew that the world was gonna collapse. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but I think that he the whole time knew that Mahito was the one who was gonna have to make that choice ultimately. He was gonna be the one who would either bring a balance, his perfect utopia that he dreamed of, or it was gonna be the end of it. And I feel like maybe the uncle was like, I think that the uncle, with either one of those decisions, he would have been like fine, because even when the whole thing collapses, he's not mad, he's not angry, he's like, he just accepts it, right? So
Right.
yeah, so I do think that ultimately he just wanted to give this choice to the person that he considered was the only one who could possibly make the right decision.
So in a way, he was still the successor. Like the successor for the great uncle
I
was the
think-
one that was
No
going
matter
to
what
have the
he
last
was.
call.
Ultimately, I think,
Right.
he was, yeah.
The one that was going to call that shot, and Mahito called it, and in a way, he was the successor, right? I think that's a great point. And another point in that, in one of the last scenes, is that, again, back to the question that the great uncle asks him, is like, are you sure you want to go back to that world where everyone kills each other? And Mahito is like, well, I cannot be the successor, there's evil in me, but at the same time, if I cannot change this reality as a whole of people killing each other, I'll at least choose to have friends like Imi, like the heron. He mentions the heron, and the heron is like, what, me? Like, was very surprised, and like Kiriko. So I also think that was a very inspiring message, again, because many times I feel we can judge people so harshly, like in a friendship, if someone doesn't act the way you would want, or something doesn't go as you planned, like you can judge reality so harshly, but you miss out on appreciating, okay, these people led me to this place, and people don't have to be perfect to be your friend, to help you fulfill a goal, to help you be a better person.
Even
So
to be, period, I feel like. They don't need to be perfect to exist.
Exactly. Yeah, no one there's no application form that you fill out before you're born, right? You're just born. And I think that's a great point to add on what you were saying, Anna. But yeah, it was very convoluted and complex, but I think right now, after discussing it, I like the story even more than before. I think we were able to dive into different topics.
Yeah, I
So-
think that we've been able to unwrap it quite a bit. Like, I didn't think about any of these things that I've mentioned before we started talking, and now I'm like, oh my god, this whole thing, it started making sense in my head right now that we discussed it. Like,
Doesn't make it less convoluted,
yeah.
but it's a nice point to I guess wrap up the movie and also the conversation about it, because I feel like now that it's in the running for the Oscars for Best Animated Movie, I feel like more and more people are going to be tempted to see it because usually Oscar-nominated movies are re-released into theaters, so more people are going to see the
Right.
movie. Right now, the ratings are really high, more than I would expect, to be honest, because I felt like I got so confused that I'm still not sure what kind of grade I would put this movie in. I guess out of 10, I would maybe give it like a 7.
Yeah, I was thinking 7.
Give or take a 7 because it's Ghibli. That's the problem, because it's super beautiful. So you want to rate it higher than it is. But if it wasn't Ghibli and if the animation was ass, then I would probably put it like a 4 or 5.
I mean, sure.
But the truth is, it's a movie that is very conceptual. I feel like it would definitely need a second rewatch, 100%, because I think I missed a lot of stuff. But the whole notion about having a right to exist, choosing your own life, and deciding against all odds that you can make your own life is a universal theme. And I feel like this really carried out the movie throughout. And the little sort of eerie kind of atmosphere was really what made the movie what it is. Also, I want to point out something that Anna said that I thought was really funny before even the recording, is that she said it shouldn't have been called The Boy and the Heron. You said it should have been called...
Right, because the thing is that
the heron didn't turn out to be that important at the end of the day.
yeah, right. It should have been called The Boy and the Old Woman.
The boy and the old woman. The boy and his mom. Like,
The boy, his aunt.
and his aunt. Because the heron was just there. At the beginning, I genuinely thought he was going to be the main character. And then he just went into the room, pooped on the floor, left. And that was like the most that he did.
Legit.
So,
Yeah.
bit
And
disappointed.
constantly the heron was telling him, I need to remind you that I'm not your friend nor your ally. You know,
Mhm.
you will have to find Kiriko alone. And then towards the end of the movie, you know, they are friends.
They are
basically.
friends. Yeah, they're
Like
friends.
But he
they
calls
are
him friend
friends in
even
a
at
way.
the end.
Yeah, at the end, at
Exactly.
the very end, he calls him friend. Yeah.
So it's like,
And
it's an unusual friendship, but
And
they
you know
happen.
what? You know what I'm thinking right now? Maybe, you know, the heron was in a way similar to Mahito, because we were asking why, like, who is this guy that is inside, like, the heron, right?
Mhm.
Like that pops out every once in a while. And I'm thinking, you see this transformation or this internal struggle in the heron of, you know, because he has like a split personality disorder, something like that, because when he regains his ability to fly, he's like, again, I'm not your friend nor your ally, you'll have to find Kiriko on your own, or trying to kill him constantly. But then specifically when they're in the forest and this guy comes out of him, he's like, you know, again, like his friend, and he's like, wait, can you, what did he say, can you like, can you cut it a little bit more, something like that. And you know, they are friendlier than when he's in the heron form, so to speak. So I'm thinking, in a way, the dynamic they have together and why they have this back and forth of, you know, this, you know, you're a liar and all herons are liars, and he's like, wait, this is a lie, but in this case it's also true. And why their dynamic is so important is because, you know, Mahito has evil in him, right? But throughout this journey, he learns to appreciate his friends and to choose life. And at the same time, I think that evil also existed in this heron. He represents, for me, like the unavoidable evil that transcends any reality, right? Because also we can see that his form, as we were pointing out, didn't change in the real world and was the same also.
Yeah, it was always the same.
Exactly. So I think he represents that constant of evil, but at the same time, having the same evil that Mahito had to a certain extent, learned to have a friend for the first time, and that's why he was so struck when
Yeah.
Mahito called him his friend. So I think maybe they were two sides of the same coin in a way, and maybe
Exactly. They were, because Mahito was someone that was nice with this sort of evil lurking inside, and the Heron was an evil being that had this good lurking inside. So they were complementing each other, and I feel like that's how they worked, and that's why the title of the movie is The Boy and the Heron, because they are the duo that makes the movie. Through it all, it's them and their unusual friendship. So personally, the word that I would end this on is maybe the Heron is the friends we made along the way.
You're fair.
Maybe the love,
thank you.
the love that we made, the most stupid
Thank you,
conclusion
sir.
in the world.
Thank you. That's the same conclusion as the ending of the movie. You know,
Exactly. And then we're just gonna
They just-
cut
They just cut.
over.
Like, cut. Over. Bye.
It will be really
Bye.
funny to do it.
Yeah, we won. We won today.
Or will
Maybe
we?
another
Or
day.
will we?
Or will we? Yeah. Anna, any final thoughts on your end?
No, I think that you guys pretty much wrapped it up. The only thing that I wanted to mention is that there's a very similar like idea to the one in Suzume of like going with, well, it's literally going back looking for your mom in a way for something, right? But it's like looking for that something that you're missing and that you think that you cannot be happy without, right? And in the end you realize that what you already had was the actual happiness that you didn't even think that you had. And so guys, we did an episode on Suzume, so go watch it. But yeah, it's just like, it's interesting how two stories of basically a similar kind of message that they're trying to tell us, they're conveyed so differently, and how Suzume is very clear, very like to the point. Of course there's things that are like also convoluted, but it's a Japanese
But
movie.
the main message is very clear.
It's super clear, and how Ghibli is more layers on layers on layers on layers. But I do think though that while I do like Suzume, I do think like The Boy and the Heron has more ideas that they're trying to convey, and Suzume is more a little bit more compacted into what they're trying to convey.
I felt like Suzume hit the heart a little bit more, because
Yes.
it felt more real.
The heart, yes, but I feel like, well, it is convoluted. I do feel like Ghibli, after all discussion, the discussion that we had, I feel like they try to hit more points of like
They hit a wider range.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Exactly. So it's two different like approaches to a similar kind of idea. So I
Mhm.
would suggest everyone to watch both
To watch
movies,
both, exactly.
and you guys can analyze and like also come to our episode to analyze with us. But it was like the final thought is like drawing the parallel between the two, and it's like it's interesting, and also interesting that both of them are running or were running for the Golden Globe. I don't remember which, The Boy and the Heron won, but
But you know what's also interesting? To like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Please do that. And yeah, I just wanted to say my final point that I wanted to highlight, and that is I really liked Himi, Mahito's mom, as a character, especially when she was like a child, basically, because she had these constant acts of, selflessness. She tried to kind of protect or keep balance to the extent that was possible in a world that was imbalanced. And she had this symbol of the fire, right? Like there's never an explanation of why she has this superpower in this alternate world, right?
I mean,
There's
I can only
not
assume that it's because she dies in a fire. I think that there is a relation.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly, and I think the same as well. But what I think it's amazing about that is that which killed her in the real world became her superpower in this alternate world, and I think that's a symbol of you using your negative experiences, and accepting them and using that as a means to help others. I think that was for me like an amazing symbol that I didn't wanna skip mentioning, and that's also like highlighted when she tells Mahito, you know, I don't care that I'll end up dying in a fire, because I still consider myself lucky to be your mom, to have you as my son. And you know, the fire, her attempt to keep balance and keeping balance and helping others with the same thing that hurt you. I think it's an amazing you know, imagery that definitely didn't go unnoticed for me. So that's my last remark.
You want to do the honor of doing the outro?
Sure. I guess we.
Do us the honor. Anna.
I guess with after all the discussion we've had and all the ideas that we've shared, I feel like we've come to a little nice wrap of our thoughts on The Boy and the Heron. So guys, we invite you in the comments to let us know what you thought of the movie. If you've watched it, if you haven't, please we tell you to we really recommend you to watch it because it's an interesting movie to discuss. Even if we said that it's not the best Ghibli movie ever, it doesn't matter. It can be to you. We want to hear what you guys want to tell us, so please tell us in the comments. Also tell us what else would you like us to talk about. And just like Marvin said, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that, I think that we can say goodbye. So bye guys. See you in the next episode.
See you soon.
Bye everyone. Thank you.